It is a truth universally acknowledged that if someone brings out a book or a video game based on a currently existing movie, that book or video game will be a honking wheelbarrow of butts. In the board game world, that was the case for the longest time. Most games based on movie IP consisted of slapping a Star Wars on an existing brand and knocking off for a lunchtime swim in their vast pool of simpletons cash. However, in the last 10 years, as board gaming has really hit its renaissance, somehow the tide has turned, and a movie-based hobby game is actually more likely to be good than terrible. It's a great time for a movie nerd to cross those streams and get into board games, although ironically, this is what our very own Luke Owen thinks of the Ghostbusters board game.
Why are you so rubbish, game? It doesn't make any sense. I've got expansion packs for you and I can't play them. Look what am I going to do with all these miniatures? What am I going to do with them all? Why are you so rubbish?
Harsh stuff, but here are some very excellent ones. I'm Adam from No Rolls Barred. This is a collection starter, and here are our top 10 movie-based board games. But first, a quick public service announcement. This list is tricky because IP-based games tend to have a shorter retail life than others. If a company loses the license, then they can't print any more copies, and recommending a game that's out of print feels cruel. So if you're wondering why games like The Thing, Infection at Outpost 31, or Everything Epic's awesome Big Trouble in Little China aren't on here, that's why. This is a list of games that are also great, but that you can also actually buy. Hooray! Number 10, Back to the Future. Back in Time. You'll be hearing Prospero Hall's name quite a bit in this list, which makes sense as they've dedicated themselves to making fun, light, and beautiful movie board games. They've made games based on The Shining, Home Alone, Groundhog Day, they made Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, which we mentioned in our family games list, and they're kicking off this list with Back to the Future Back in Time, one of the cutest games I've ever seen. 2 to 4 players play as Marty, Doc, Jennifer, and Einstein, who by the way is not only a good boy, but essential to victory, and you work cooperatively moving around Hill Valley, trying to make George and Lorraine fall in love, finding parts of the DeLorean, and moving this actually wonderful tiny little model DeLorean into the right spot on the board for exactly 10:04 PM. Everything from the color palette to the cartoon designs is so winsome, which makes it all the weirder that Back in Time is also one of the hardest games I've ever played. Great Scott, it is some serious shit. The game is full of skill tests and require you to roll dice, and if you roll a Biff face at any point, he moves around the board and messes with your plans, and no Biff, you leave her alone. Winning the game will require more luck than some gamers like, but if you're looking for something that's real easy to learn, but also a fiendish challenge and a real joy to look at, Back in Time is a cracker. Number 9, Godzilla Tokyo Clash. Hello again, Prospero Hall, and an IP that has seen no end of terrible video games, movies, and board games. The king of the monsters himself, the Doctor of Halitosis, Big Billy Turtle, stomps Mackenzie Godzilla. Tokyo Clash is a beat-em-up board game that is also one of the first ever made to truly capture the city-smashing silliness of hot monster-on-monster action, as Mr. Zilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and to a lesser extent Megalon, go full kaiju on each other. You're stomping around the map, throwing cars at each other, throwing each other into buildings, charging up energy in order to play cards, and sweet Manila, these cards are just stunning. The whole product really captures the feel of Godzilla, and that's before you get to the miniatures and round of applause, even unpainted. These are lovely. If you have a Godzilla lover in your life, this is right up their street. Luke likes Godzilla, so we bought it for him, and it's
right up my street.
Number 8, Jaws. Full disclosure, we are not sponsored by Prospero Hall. They just happen to be making a whole bunch of really fun games about really fun movies. This is their day. Let's talk about Jaws, which sees a team of players playing as Brody, Quint, and Hooper versus one player who's playing as the shark. Nom nom. It's actually quite an unusual game because it's literally a game of two halves. In the first act, it's a hidden movement game, the shark secretly moving around the waters surrounding Amity Island, while the humans are moving on land and sea, trying to attach barrels to the shark, removing swimmers to safety. This first half is very important because the side that does better here will start the second half in a stronger position when the board flips over and we're transported to the Orca for a final desperate men versus fish fight to the death, with the shark munching off bits of the boat as the delicious meaty men try to blast her with every weapon they can find whilst avoiding being dumped in the water, and then he bites you and those black eyes roll over white. Wonderful game, tense all the way through and completely different depending on which side of the game you're playing. Your going to need a bigger wallet. Number 7, Unmatched Jurassic Park. It's no secret that we at No Rolls Barred adore Unmatched, the hugely collectible fighting game that sees multiple universes of characters from fiction, folklore, and history clashing with wonderful results. You could argue that Unmatched Cobble and Fog, the best box so far, is movie-based. Dracula, Invisible Man, Jekyll and Hyde, Sherlock Holmes, they've all strutted their stuff on the silver screen, but because Book Internet will shout at me, I'll stick with the Jurassic Park expansion. Oh no, that's a book too. Off. This expansion, which can also be played as its own standalone game, sees Robert Muldoon and the Expendable Boys down at InGen face off against 3 exceptionally clever girls. See, the wonderful thing about Unmatched is not just the art style, which is super evocative and cool, it's how the designers have managed to capture the spirit of each character via the gameplay mechanisms unique to them. Muldoon lays traps, has a team of men that are easily killed but can block off pathways. He's super good at locking down parts of the map and hanging back to take a pot shot at you. The Raptors are individually very weak, but they're super fast, and if they surround you with the attack coming not from the front, but from the side, they can do an unholy amount of damage in one turn. Tension, horror, and triumph. Number 6, The Godfather, Corleone's Empire. Don't let the big box fool you into thinking this is a bloated, complicated game. Godfather, Corleone's Empire is a surprisingly easy to pick up worker placement game, lean but cruel like a calzone. The box is big because it was made by Cool Mini or Not, a game that packs its games with lovely little accessories like these gangster minis, or even sillier, each player having their own suitcase to squirrel their money away so players can't see it. These suitcases are really silly. I'm a huge fan. The game takes place over 4 acts, named after moments from the movie. Spoiler, Sonny has a bad time, and it sees you spending each go trying not to be careless, using your power over the city of New York to acquire money or illegal goods, complete jobs for Don Corleone, whack your fellow players' pieces and dump them in the Hudson, or recruit allies. You can play thugs to shake down specific businesses for one big benefit, but only if that spot's free, or you can play these family members at intersections between multiple turfs for lots of little benefit. You'll be engaging in turf wars with each other to own specific sections of the map, and all of it while talking in Italian-American accents because it's physically impossible not to while playing this game.
Hey, it's me, Tony Lasagna, from the neighborhood.
Admittedly, of all the games on this list, this is the game that probably has the least to do with its actual movie. It's more of a really good game with some Godfather stuff you recognize than a game that lets you play out a whole bunch of scenes from the movies themselves. There is a horsehead token though. Of course there is. Number 5, Villainous. Gosh, Villainous is a very popular game, and for once that's actually deserved. It feels like a game that shouldn't really exist. We're not expecting Disney to sign off on an actual hobby game with set collection, hand management, variable player powers, where it's your job to play as movie villains and murder Dopey by poisoning him to death. But hey, I'll take it. Also, Villainous might be one of the best couples games ever made. See, each player has their own board, their realm, and their own unique objective to win. Maybe having a curse in each location, or having 20 of these power tokens. So a lot of the game will be you moving around your own board with your very pretty playing piece, doing your own thing, playing these very pretty cards to get your own little plan in motion, pausing only occasionally to screw with your opponent by playing one of their own heroes against them. With more than 4 players, this can be way too many things to keep track of, or the game can go on for too long. But with just 2 players, it's a joy to spend some of your turn working on your own schemes, some of it kicking your opponent's schemes in the dick. It can get really cutthroat and intense, and again, this is a Disney game. The base game comes with Ursula, Jafar, Prince John, Captain Hook, Maleficent, and the Queen of Hearts, but like Unmatched, there's a bunch of expansions and villains, all with gorgeous pieces and cards. It is a license to print money, but a hell of a game. Also, there's a Marvel one. Of course there is. Disney. Number 4, Horrified. This is the last Prospero Hall game, I promise. And yes, we've covered it before in our top 10 co-op games list, but the more time that passes, the more I think that this is not only Prospero Hall's finest game, one of the best and most beautiful movie adaptations in board gaming, but it might just be creeping up on Ticket to Ride as the best game to introduce new gamers to the hobby. A simplified version of Pandemic, a co-op game that's easy to learn with modular difficulty with recognizable and cool movie monsters. That's a perfect storm of mainstream appeal. For those who've never heard of it, you play as humans navigating a town trying to survive and defeat universal monsters like the Batman, Fluffy Lad, Sue Storm, Sentient Mold, the Undateables, and Smelly Shambles. Each monster has a different game within a game you need to play, smashing up coffins, solving puzzles, collecting certain items, all while a deck of random horrible monster events play out. It's ridiculously charming and very pretty indeed, and also you can fight 2 monsters as you learn the game, which is fairly easy, but then you just add monsters to increase the challenge, and there's a bunch of replayability here as different combinations make for wildly different strategies. Well done, Prospero Hall. Well done. Number 3, Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core. Love a game based on aliens. Me, Burke's Gambit's great. Legendary Encounters is great. Nemesis is not technically based on aliens, but I mean, come on, look at it. But this time we're looking at Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core, sent to us by our friends at Asmodee UK, which is a nightmare, but the best kind of nightmare, one where you get to load up a gun that's twice the size of you and fight back against the boogeyman. It's a shoot 'em up co-op survival game that sees you play as either Ripley, Marines like Vasquez, Hicks or Hudson, or you can play as Newt. Don't though. The game takes place in Hadley's Hope as you play a campaign of missions, so you face off against a wave of xenomorph miniatures that, warning, you do have to build yourself, but when you do, they look like this, taking them on with smart guns, sentry guns, and of course, harsh language.
What the hell are we supposed to use, man? Harsh language?
The game has this wonderful card management mechanic. To get new weapons, armor, etc., you have to draw them from this endurance deck. However, to do pretty much anything with these cards will require you to exhaust cards from that same deck. If you run out of cards, you're in some real pretty shit, so you need to rest, recycle cards back into the deck, and knowing when to rest and when to spend a whack of cards and a hail of gunfire that blitzes half the room, that is the joy of this game, and also taking down swarms of aliens because they mostly come at always, mostly. Number 2, Star Wars Rebellion. Cue up the Imperial March and make way for the big boy. A hefty box, a galaxy-sized board, enough thematic plastic to awaken the Force, and a killer concept that'll make certain Star Wars fans weep with joy into their Moff Tarkin body pillows. Rebellion is a 2-player game. One of you plays the Empire, the other plays the Rebellion, and both players will have a vastly different game. The Empire will be spreading across the cosmos, branding planets with their corporate logo, choking space with warships, and silencing millions of voices for the lulz. The Rebellion will be dotting their heroes around the map, disrupting plans, inciting uprisings, and generally being a tiny but persistent pain in the ass. So far, that's fun. Empire feels like Empire, Rebels feels like Rebels, but here's the twist that makes Rebellion's gameplay gorgeous. The Rebels have a secret base, one of these planets on the board, and all the Empire has to do to win is find it and either invade, wiping out its forces, or blow it up completely with this adorable little Death Star. Ironically, in this game, the Rebels are the Phantom Menace, and this creates a super tense system of bluff and counter bluff. Frustrated howls of rebel scum from the Empire as yet another planet turns out to be empty, and desperate paranoia on behalf of the Rebels as the withered fingers of Palpatine grasp closer towards your secret headquarters. It's big and expensive, but if you want to play a war game that feels uniquely Star Wars, this is the game you're looking for. And number 1, Dune. So look, I didn't put any Lord of the Rings games on this list, even though War of the Ring and Journeys in Middle-earth are great, because they felt more like book-based games, and then here I come putting Dune as my number 1. The hypocrisy of it all, but also get off my Kwisatz Hader back, I owe you nothing. There are 2 major Dune board games right now. Dune Imperium is a deck-building game enjoying quite a lot of love in the hobby right now. This one, just called Dune by Gale Force 9, this is my spice. Each player plays as one of the starring factions, Atreides, Harkonnen, the Bene Gesserit, the Fremen, and more, with each player having a unique power that totally screws with the game's rules. And if that sounds like another of my favourite games, it's because the original game of Dune was designed by the folk who made Cosmic Encounter. Oh yes, it's a lot crunchier than Cosmic. You're sending troops in, solving combat using these silly wheels. But what really ties the game together is there's so much thematic richness here, from the sandstorms that move around the board, obliterating forces stuck outside, to the huge sandworms that pop up and randomly eat people, leaving spice behind, the currency in the game, which must flow of course, to all the scheming and shifting alliances between players. If you like conflict-heavy games, betraying people, huge worms, over-the-top powers, and I like all of these, then they don't come much better than Dune. Do. Oh, I'm a nerd. And that's our list. What's your favourite board game based on a movie? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and share this video around if you enjoyed it. And hey, subscribe to No Rolls Barred if you haven't already, because every subscription really, really helps. And for more silly board game content, make sure you get on board.